بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. صلى الله وسلم عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله وسلم عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة، ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers and sisters, elders, guests and scholars, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Holy Quran places a great emphasis on the duty of all Muslims to establish and maintain the bonds of blood relationships. And whenever the Quran addresses those who should receive assistance, enumerated among those at the top of the list are the closest of kin. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nahl, verse 60, that God surely or verily enjoins upon you adl, which is justice, ihsan, which are virtuous deeds or benevolence, and immediately after that, وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and to support the closest of kin. وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغِي. And God forbids you from enjoining fahsha, which is abominations, munkar is that which is wrong, and baghi is rebellion. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى, until the rest of the verse. Chapter number 4, Surah An-Nisa, verse 36. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ, worship God. وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, do not enjoin any partners with Him. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and to enjoin virtue or to practice virtue and benevolence towards your parents. After the parents come, dhil qurba, the closest of kin after them. So whenever you find a list of people who are entitled to assistance or entitled to care and support and benevolence, at the top of the list are the closest of kin. And so that begs the question, what do we learn from the prophetic family model? Because the example that the Quran supports, that it says that God enjoins us to do, that example is first and foremost manifested in whom? The representative of God. And that is the Prophet, and by extension, the successors of the Prophet, or the successors of the Prophets. In our case, it is the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So, the closest of kin, number one, are the parents, and then in a wider sense, we are obliged to treat our relatives with care. Now, material support is an obligation, but it is also something which is conditional. The Quran lays it out as something which is conditional. And in one verse says the following, and this is Surah At-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 23. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَتَّخِذُوا آبَاءَكُمْ وَإِخْوَانَكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ إِنِ اسْتَحَبُّوا الْكُفْرَ عَلَى الْإِيمَانِ. O you who believe, do not take your fathers, آباءكم, وإخوانكم, your brothers, your brethren, أولياء إن استحبوا الكفر على الإيمان. Do not take them as awliya if they prefer kufr, which is infidelity, over iman, which is belief. And let's focus on this for a moment, because there's a really important message here. First of all, why does the Quran place an emphasis on the maintenance of blood relationships? Well, one thing can be suggested is that early community of Muslims, many of them, as you know, had to go against their own family members. Among them were the members of the Prophet's household. Not everybody was on board, even within the Prophet's own family. In fact, some of his most staunch opponents were from his own family. The Quran tells us the story of Abu Lahab. It mentions by name Abu Lahab, the uncle of the Prophet. Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. God curses the hands of Abu Lahab because he was a staunch opponent of his own nephew. And some of the members of the Quraysh, the tribal elders, the influential people, they themselves were in close relation to the Prophet, or in some sort of relation to the Prophet, but they turned against him. Not only the Prophet, but some of his own companions had to go against their own family members. So, number one, it was a really confusing time. And so people had questions of, well, if I'm joining this new community, and if I'm pledging allegiance to this new community, well, what happens to my blood relationships? What happens to my parents who don't see things the way I see them? What happens to my brothers and sisters who don't see the way things that I see them? What happens to my companions and friends and people of authority and influence, people I've surrounded myself with them, if they don't see the way things I see them? And this is why the Quran talks about blood relationships and maintaining them. However, this verse in itself is very interesting because it talks about two different things. One is it differentiates between family members whom you respect, who you do not disrespect, you respect and honor, but it also talks about who do you allow to influence you. And this is a big question, and it's relevant even today. We need to ask ourselves, who are the people that I'm allowing to influence my decisions in my life? The Quran is saying in terms of belief, when it comes to belief, it says to those early believers, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, those who believe, and whenever that term appears in the Quran, it refers to the believers. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, la tattakhidhu aba'akum wa ikhwanakum awliya'a in istahabbu al-kufra ala al-iman. Do not take them as awliya if they choose infidelity over belief. Why? Because they will lead you back to infidelity. Because they don't have fruit on the tree. Now the word here is very interesting. Awliya. And if you read the Quranic translation or the Quranic commentary, the word that appears for awliya is friends. But awliya are more than friends. Awliya are people who have wilaya upon you, meaning that they have influence and authority. And that influence itself is authority. And the people that we surround ourselves with on a daily basis, they have influence and authority. And that's why you find that people who are winners and want to progress in life, who do they surround themselves with? And who do they try to learn from? They try to learn from other winners and people who are moving in the right direction. And this is something that's really interesting, because it really takes a certain approach and a certain type of understanding to understand that sometimes you seek something, and that the people who are closest to you, even though they may love you or they may have they may be emotionally vested in you, but maybe they don't have fruit on the tree in the area that you're seeking. Clear example, if you want to get in physical shape. If you want to get in physical shape, who do you listen to? You listen to people with fruit on the tree. If you're going to listen to somebody who maybe is a relative or brother or a father or mother or cousin or an uncle or a friend who doesn't care about being healthy, doesn't care about staying in good physical shape, should you be listening to that person? If you want to get into good financial shape, and this is where most people falter, you want to get in good financial shape, you listen to people who are broke, who don't have what you want. If you want to have relationships, if you want to have a good marriage, do you listen to the person who himself doesn't have a good marriage? If you want to learn how to respect your parents and honor your parents, do you talk to the guy who hasn't talked to his parents? If you want to know how to have fulfilling relationships, do you talk to the guy who hasn't spoken to his brother in a year? Because this is very common in our communities. We listen to people who don't have fruit on the tree in the area that we're seeking. And in this instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't allow those people who don't have fruit on the tree, don't allow them to be your awliya. Not friends. Don't allow them to be influencers in your life. And it really takes a certain type of thinking to be able to make this, to be able to distinguish properly. So don't seek the people who are of disbelief or of infidelity to teach you about belief. So the Quran is basically saying, protect your mind, protect your brain, protect the information that you choose to put in your brain. Very important message. Because the people that you surround yourself with and you allow them to influence you, sometimes they will affect you subconsciously. You know, it's so interesting. If you go out there today and you study marketing, you begin to realize certain things. The way that advertisers, they choose to market to somebody. Sometimes it's not in your face. Sometimes it's subconscious. If you ever watch a sporting event and the different advertisers, you'll see an advertisement. You know, the camera will zoom in and then a certain advertisement, and it's subconscious. You know, Pizza Hut advertisement, all of a sudden you find yourself hungry for pizza. I don't know why I'm hungry for pizza. Because the advertisement was right there. That's the whole point behind marketing, is to subconsciously affect you so that they can get you to buy their product. Because our brain works on a subconscious level as well. And sometimes when you surround yourselves with the wrong type of people, they begin to influence you on a subconscious level. Don't say, no, this friend or this person can't influence me. I'm going to hang out with them, but they can't influence me. No, they do influence you. By virtue of them being in your little circle, they can influence you, sometimes without you even knowing. And that's why we have many narrations that tell us to surround ourselves with the right type of people. When you look at the story of Luqman in the Quran, this is very interesting. There's a chapter dedicated to Luqman, Surah Luqman. And in that chapter, Luqman speaks to his son. And there's a number of verses where Luqman gives directives to his son. He tells him certain things. He tells him, for instance, لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. Do not associate partners with God, for that is a major form of oppression, associating partners with God. There are narrations which continue what Luqman does not say in the Quran. A number of narrations narrated from the authority of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. In one of those narrations, Luqman says the following to his son. He says, associate yourself with people of knowledge and do not associate yourself with people of ignorance. He says, associate yourself with people of knowledge, because if you yourself are a person of knowledge, then what will happen when you associate with other people of knowledge? Your knowledge will multiply and it will exceed. He says, and do not associate and if you are not knowledgeable yourself, you will benefit from other people's knowledge. And he says, do not associate with people of ignorance, because if you are a knowledgeable person, it's not going to benefit you to hang out and associate yourself with people of ignorance, because their stupidity may rub off on you. And if you're ignorant, it's ignorance upon ignorance and stupidity upon stupidity. And he says that if you associate yourself and you place yourself in the circle among people of knowledge, then you never know. God may bestow His mercy upon those people and you will be included in that mercy. Because narrations tell us that whenever good people get together for a good, virtuous cause, that becomes a cause for mercy being sent. So when we gather and we remember the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, for instance, this in itself, this gathering is a blessed gathering. This gathering prompts the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when people do the opposite, when they get together for a cause of vice, when they get together just to waste time, when they get together just to talk about useless things and non-productive things, the opposite happens. That God may send His wrath upon those people, and you may be included within that wrath. You may be affected by that wrath. So really understanding our circle of associations and understanding how they influence us. And that's why the Quran says, you have people in your life, and this is one rule when it comes to our closest of kin, that yes, you respect your kin, and when it comes to those who receive assistance, they're at the top of the list, but understand that sometimes the closest of kin, if they don't have the fruit on the tree, then don't follow them. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا آباءكم وإخوانكم أولياء إن استحبوا الكفر على الإيمان. Do not take them as people of influence if they choose infidelity over belief. And so that answers the question to a lot of the new Muslims at the time. Because some of them would ask the Prophet, what do I do when it comes to my father? What do I do when it comes to my mother? What do I do when it comes to my brother or my cousin or my brother-in-law or my sister-in-law? And that answers an important question. Another thing that another point that the Quran makes when it comes to the bonds of blood relationships is the following, is that the right of kin to kindness, care, and material support take precedence over voluntary ties of friendship and alliance. And this is expressed in another verse in the Quran. This is chapter 33, Surah Al-Ahzab, verse number 6. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُهَاجِرِينَ. Ulul arham are the people of close kin. بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ. Awla means that they are a priority. Over whom? Who are they a priority over? مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُهَاجِرِينَ. So the mu'mineen are the believers. And by joining the community of the believers, you have become among the believers. That's a voluntary tie of allegiance. وَالْمُهَاجِرِينَ. Muhajirin are whom? The emigrants. The ones that migrated from Mecca to Medina. That's another voluntary act, which includes a person in that voluntary group. The Quran says that those who are closest of kin, they are awla, they are a priority. And this teaches us another very important point that we can understand, is that sometimes we invest time and money and energy outside the home with people that we are voluntarily a part of a group with, and we don't invest that same time and energy with the people that are closest to us. We make people that are outside, that we have voluntary ties with, we make them the asset that we invest in instead of making our own family members the asset that we invest in. And there's no better asset that you can invest in than your own family members. It doesn't matter what you give on the outside if you have not learned to give at home. And that's why you find that some people, they're struggling when it comes to their home. Because maybe they're leaders outside, or maybe they're looked up to outside. Outside people look up to them because they give time and energy outside. But people within their own home do not look up to them because they don't exert that same energy. Have you seen this? Sometimes, maybe some of you have seen this. The Quran says that when it comes to blood relationships, وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ. Your blood relationships are the priority. Your wife is the priority. Your husband is the priority. Your children are the priority, not your friends outside. Work on yourself. Work within your own circle of influence, and then work on the outside. وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. Now, one thing that the Prophet did to remedy this, because again, like we said, is a lot of the early Muslims, they had to leave their own family members when it came to joining the community of the Muslims, and then when it came to the migration. So what did the Prophet do? One of the first significant acts of the Prophet when he arrived in Medina was the act of mu'akhat. which is the establishment of ties of brotherhood. And he deliberately chose people whom he knew would get along with one another and would support one another and shared the same vision and had the same passion as one another, and he established ties of brotherhood between them. This is a significant event in the life of the Muslims, because he understood that to compensate, because many of them had left their family members behind, or their family members had left them and decided not to join them. So how do we remedy that? We create bonds of brotherhood between people, mu'akhat. And the Quran states, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ Surah Al-Hujurat. Verily, the believers are brothers. So create peace and create reconciliation between brothers. And the act of creating reconciliation between brothers, there's one narration, it says, Al-Islahu Dhat al-Bayn, to create reconciliation between two brothers or two sisters or between two believers, is greater than the worship of Al-Thaqalain, which are the humans and the jinn. If you count all of the humans and all of the jinn and all of their worship, and you count that reward, God says, or through the hadith of course, that the hadith says that if you create reconciliation between two people, two brothers in belief, two sisters in belief, then that is more rewarding than all of that worship which is dedicated to God. So that was a very significant event as well. Another point that the Quran makes is that the obligation to provide support and care, and by the way, when we talk about support, it's not only material support, sometimes it's moral support. Sometimes your brother or your sister or your cousin or your father or your mother or your son or daughter isn't necessarily in need of monetary support or physical support. Sometimes they're better off than you. And we assume sometimes that because someone financially is better off than me, that they don't need anything. No, we are all in need. In one way or another, we are all in need. And the Quran makes a point out of this. Ya ayyuhan nas, antumul fuqara'u ila Allah. O people, you are faqir. Faqir is somebody who is in need. You are needy in one way or another. We never get to a point in our lives where we say that that's it, I have everything, I don't need anyone or I don't need anything. No, by nature as a human being, we are not wired by nature to be solitary beings. We need the assistance of other people, and there's no shame in saying that we need the assistance of other people. That's why you find that one of the ways that inmates are imprisoned today is by what? Solitary confinement. All you have to do is take this inmate and put him away. Put him in the hole for 2 days, for a week, for 3 weeks, for a month, 6 months. What happens? They begin to lose their mind. Even if they're fed, even if they're taken care of by the doctor, but they begin to lose their mind. Ya ayyuhan nasu antumul fuqara. You are always in need. So we must understand that and take that into consideration. Don't look at people and judge them by their appearances and say that just because this person is maybe better off than me physically or financially, that this person is not in need. We are always in need. So the Quran is saying that when you give to someone who is in need, whether they are in need of financial support, material support, or moral support, go to those who are closest in kin. Now, another point that's made is that this support must not be suspended because of personal grudges. And that's another big challenge that we face, is personal grudges. Sometimes we hold a grudge, and the longer you hold on to that grudge, the more intense it becomes. Even though initially that grudge is based on something which is minute, which is minuscule, which has no value. But when you hold on to something for a long time, it becomes more heavy. I'll give you an example. If you have a bottle like this, and you hold out your arm and you hold out the bottle, this bottle doesn't weigh much. It's only a few ounces of water. 17 ounces, 17 fluid ounces of water when this bottle is full. Now if you try this, you could probably hold out your arm for 30 seconds, for 1 minute, for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes. What happens after 15 minutes? Begins to get a little bit heavier. Imagine you hold on to it for 15 hours, or for 30 hours, or for 40 hours. What happens? Your arm falls off. Imagine holding on to it for 1 year. It's impossible. Sometimes we have minuscule things, minute things that we hold on to, but what happens? It begins to perpetuate. It becomes more serious. It feels more heavy because we've held on to it for a long time. And that's the nature of personal grudges that we have. The Quran says, do not allow your obligations towards those who are closest of kin be suspended because of personal grudges. And this is in Surah An-Nur, chapter number 24, verse 22. وَلَا يَأْتَلِ أُولُو الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ وَالسَّعَةِ أَنْ يُؤْتُوا أُولِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْمُهَاجِرِينَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. A very profound statement. Don't allow your personal grudges that you have with other people suspend your obligation from doing good towards them. How many times do we hold within one community, within one organization, within one masjid, we have personal grudges that people hold against one another. And sometimes, again, they're so minute. It's over something which is so minute, but because of time, and you know, time, it has a compounding effect. Anything that's held over time, or anything which is done consistently over time, that perpetuates the effect of that thing. The Quran says that you hold personal grudges against one another and you stop assisting one another. The Quran gives an example. It says, well, what if God did the same thing to you? Imagine if God held personal grudges. وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا. Let them forgive. Let them have mercy to one another. أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Don't you desire for God to have mercy towards you and forgive you? Imagine if God held a personal grudge. What would happen? Imagine if that thing that we did last night, or the week before, or the month before, or the year before, God says, you know what? I know you're doing a lot of good stuff right now, but I can't get over that thing that you did last week. And I don't want to talk to you about it. And don't come and talk to me, please. In the same way that we use this language with a lot of people. I'm no longer your brother. I'm no longer your friend. Don't ever talk to me anymore. Right? This happens within communities. Imagine if God was to do the same thing. Would you survive one day? You wouldn't even survive one moment. وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Do you not wish that God is merciful towards you and forgives you? If you want that, then learn to be merciful and have forgiveness towards others. There's a profound narration. It says the following. It says, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Assimilate yourself with the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at God's amazing attributes, generosity, mercy, forgiveness, benevolence, kindness, learn from these attributes. You will never reach God in that specific level, but the more you attempt and the more you strive and the more you work on yourself, the greater the outcome will be. Now, what does this have to do with the role of the prophets, the prophetic family model, and specifically the family model in the example of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Because you find that Imam Hussein had the greatest and most loyal family members and the closest of kin that stood beside him. And among those were his companions that he describes also as his brothers. Now, when you look at the stories of the prophets, the earlier prophets in the Quran, one thing that you notice is that their families played an important role against, well, number one, in supporting them in their mission, and number two, supporting them against their adversaries. And this is true for many of the universal prophets. Even though not all of them were on board. Such as in the case of whom? Nuh. Not everybody was on board, no pun intended. Other prophets as well. The Quran tells us in Surah Al-Tahrim of two prophets. One is Nuh, Noah, and the other is Lot. Both of their wives, كانتا تحت عبدين من عبادنا صالحين. They were with two of our abdain, two of our servants, salih, two of our virtuous or two of our righteous servants. But they turned away against the teachings. And this here teaches us a very valuable lesson. That just because a person is closest in kin, that does not grant them inherent virtue. And this is true even for the case of our own prophet. Just because of marriage or just because of relation, that doesn't grant the person inherent virtue. Again, look at the example of Abu Lahab, the uncle of the Prophet. If we were to say that just because this person is related, that they would be granted virtue, that's not following the right principle. When Imam Ali alayhi salam went out for the first battle when he was caliph, the battle of Jamal, it's narrated that one of his companions came to him and he looked to him, he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, what's going on? He looked to the other side of the battlefield. And he saw Fulan and Fulan and Fulan and people that they had recognized that were companions of the Prophet before. He said, who are these people? Why are we standing on the other side of the battlefield? What's going on? And the Imam turned to him. He said, you look a little bit confused. Let me clarify for you. He says that good and evil, or virtue and vice, are not defined by men and the actions of men. He said it's the other way around. And he said a very profound statement. He said, اعرف الحق تعرف أهله واعرف الباطل تعرف أهله. Understand what good and what virtue is in itself, independently, and then you will know who is good and who is virtuous. And the same goes for the opposite. Understand what evil and vice is in itself, and then you'll be able to identify who is on the wrong path. Meaning, don't look at this person and say just because that he is good. Just because he is Fulan ibn Fulan, or just because he was accompanying the Prophet. And that teaches us a very profound principle. Sometimes we idolize certain characters, certain religious characters or certain figures. We idolize them to the point that we can't imagine them ever doing a mistake or committing wrong. And this is maybe due to the nature that we inherently we try to see the good in people. Just because we notice a few acts of good, we try to permanently see the good in people. Imam Ali alayhi salam teaches us, he says, don't see that just because this person was with the Prophet automatically, that they've earned righteousness for the rest of their life. Maybe at the end of their life they do something wrong. They do something of vice. اعرف الحق تعرف أهله واعرف الباطل تعرف أهله. Now going back to that prophetic family model, you find that most of the prophets, their supporters came within their own family members first. So you look at the case of Musa, the prophet Musa. Who was his supporter during his life? Harun. And Harun was his brother. Harun was the man who he left behind when he went to receive the revelation. And he came back after a few days, and he found that they wanted the people that he had left behind Harun with to command and to guide. They wanted to kill him. They wanted to get rid of him. During his life, it was Harun. After his life, because if you read the story of Musa, although he leaves with Banu Israel from Egypt, but they never enter Palestine, al-Ard al-Muqaddasa, with Musa. Musa is not there. Who is there? His successor, Yusha' bin Nun. In the biblical narrative, he's known as Joshua. He is the one that enters into the land of Palestine. In the case of Isa alayhi salam, we are taught that one of his most loyal followers who became his successor was whom? Simon Peter, Sham'un as-Safa. But most people, of course, turned away from him. And of course, there's a pattern where you have the successors that are chosen by these prophets and these messengers. But then after that, what happens? People usually turn away from them. That's the model of the prophets, unfortunately. But that support came within. And that model continues with our own Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And so to answer the question, and this is a very profound question, was why did Imam Hussein alayhi salam take his family members with him? If he knew that he was going to certain death, why did he take his family members with him? Now, people have speculated and asked the question, and there are many different responses. One response, some suggest that it was the custom of the Arabs at the time that when they went out to battle, when they went out to fight, that they took their family with them, and Imam Hussein was simply following custom. This may be correct, but Imam Hussein is not obliged to follow that custom. It's not obligatory upon him to follow that custom if he knows that it's going to lead to certain death. Some say that he took them there so that his family had to witness, so that there would be people that could witness and then relay the event. And this may be true to a certain extent, but again, it didn't have to be his own family members to witness. There were other people that witnessed. In fact, if you read the narrations, there were people who were from outside of the family, that were even from outside of the camp of Imam Hussein, that were there to witness. One of those prominent figures is Hamid ibn Muslim. Hamid ibn Muslim was a reporter that was sent from Kufa to Karbala in order to report on the events. And he found himself in sort of a neutral position. In the same way that when you have an event, and today when you have a significant event and the press are there, when the president says something and the press are there to report on what he is saying, or a sporting event, or a concert, or whatever it is, that you have reporters that are there that are not for one side or the other side, or in a war zone, this makes more sense. They're there not to be biased. And of course, we're all prone to human error and human judgment. So there were other people that could report. Some scholars say in order to exacerbate the tragedy, to show what a tragedy it was. Some suggest that it was to incite the people to come to his aid, so that people would sympathize with him when they found that it was only 72 people that supported him. Now, all of this is speculation, but one important question that we should ask is, if his family did not come with him, what was the alternative? Where would they go? Would they stay back in Medina? We know what happened after Ashura in Medina, immediately after Waq'atul Harra, where the armies of Yazid went into Medina and they desecrated the masjid of the Prophet. And they desecrated the grave of the Prophet. And they pillaged and they tortured and they raped and they destroyed. Do you think the family of the Prophet would have been safe from this? This is one. Number two, going to Mecca. Imam Hussein, when he saw that Medina was no longer safe towards the end of Rajab, the 28th of Rajab, he leaves and he goes to Mecca. Even when he goes to Mecca, which is a land which is supposed to be safe, وَمَنْ دَخَلَهُ كَانَ آمِنًا, he who enters shall be safe. Even there they are not safe from the family. Even there they are not safe from the army of Yazid. So the Imam saw that there was no other alternative except to take the family with him. His most loyal people, his most beloved people, people like his brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, undying loyalty. People like Ali al-Akbar, his son, unwavering faith. People like his nephew Al-Qasim, who saw death sweeter than honey. And people like Zainab alayhi salam, the woman who had the strength of her father and the eloquence of her father and the patience of her mother and the strength of her siblings. However, there were a number of people that had to stay behind. Imam Hussein leaves behind his brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya, and in the care of Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya, narrators tell us that he left behind a young daughter, Fatima, who was too sick to undertake this journey. She is known as Fatima al-Alila, Fatima, the ill one, the sick one, who was a young girl at the time and did not really understand why this journey had to be taken. And narrators tell us that Imam Hussein, when he had decided to leave Medina to go towards Mecca, they were preparing the caravan. The women and the children and the sons of Banu Hashim, they were preparing the caravan, preparing everything that they needed for that journey. Fatima al-Alila, she came to her father Hussein alayhi salam, and she said, "My dear father, I know that you are going on this journey and I am too sick to come on this journey, but I ask that you leave behind a remnant for me so that I can remember you. I ask that you leave behind my dear brother Ali al-Asghar, my infant brother, because I want something to remember you by." Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, "My dear Fatima, we are going on a long journey and you cannot accompany us because of your illness. However, your younger brother, he needs his mother. He cannot leave without his mother. He is at an age where he is being nursed by his mother. But he says, I promise that we will send back and we will come back to you. That some of us, at least some of us, will return to you." After many days passed and many weeks passed, many months passed, Fatima al-Alila, she is there waiting in Medina for her father to come back, for her brothers to come back, for her uncle al-Abbas to come back. She is waiting for her siblings and for her cousins to come back. All of a sudden, it is said that a caravan begins to approach Medina. When that caravan begins to approach Medina, it has much less than what it took. It comes back much lighter than when it left. One of the poets by the name of Bishr, he goes out and he meets this caravan. He notices in that caravan the leader is Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, but that caravan has lost its leader. It has lost Sayyid al-Shuhada. It has lost Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When Bishr comes to the fourth Imam tells him, "Oh Bishr, go to the people and announce what has happened to my father Hussein. Make an announcement and prepare the people for mourning." So Bishr goes inside Medina and he begins to chant to the people, "Ya ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum biha, قتل الحسين فأدمعي مدرار, الجسم منه بكربلاء مضرج والرأس منه على القناة يدار." O people of Yathrib, do you know what has happened? Hussein has been left in Karbala. His body has been left by the river. His body is left in one place and his head is being touted and championed among the cities. Banin comes out at that moment. She comes to Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. She begins to ask about her dear Hussein. She says to him, "What has happened to Hussein? I have received this tragic news. What has happened to him?" He says, "My dear lady, I give you condolences on your son." And he names her sons one by one, the 4 sons that she lost in Karbala. He says, "My dear lady, I give you condolences on your son Al-Abbas." She said, "I did not ask for Abbas, I asked for Hussein." He says, "My dear lady, I give you condolences on Hussein, for he has been killed in Karbala." At that moment, Banin, she falls in anguish. She falls and begins to weep and cry. The rest of the people of Medina come to know what has happened and they join her in her aza. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين وصلوا على محمد